The aim of this episode is to demonstrate the historical sequence that documents the giving of the Torah. Dozens of books preserve and record the impacts of the Torah, thereby documenting the event of its giving and its dissemination as a central text in the early history of the Israeli people. This is about the literature of the prophets and the writings. While the Tanakh is divided into only 24 books, many of these books contain a combination of numerous and varied documents, as we will detail later. The Tanakh is a creation of many generations and represents the essence of Israeli creation in the first millennium of the nation's existence. Before we review the documentation throughout history, we'll see how Israeli literature through the ages meets the characteristics of a historical sequence that we presented in the previous article. Scene script. 1. Organic continuation of society from the time of events. The Tanakh was translated and published worldwide in the 3rd century BCE. The Jewish society of those days was a direct continuation of the same people who left Egypt 1,000 years earlier. There was no need for any transformation to transmit the information. It was passed naturally and popularly. The Jewish people zealously preserved their appearance and tradition. They are definitely an organic continuation of one unified society. 2. Literature that society attributes status and credibility to. The literature of the Torah and the prophets constituted the word of God, and the words of the prophets considered the most sacred and reliable. A prophet who spoke falsely in the name of God was punishable by death, as written in the Torah itself, and as seen in the prophets throughout history. No nation has ever sanctified a text and authority as the Jews did their holy scriptures. Throughout this period, no doubt was cast, and there is no record of a credibility claim against these books. If there is any criterion for literature considered credible by the people, the Tanakh certainly meets this criterion. As an aside, we address the argument that religious books are theology. This is a mistaken argument. Every society has its myth, and since European society was a Christian society, are we to refer to all the historical writings from the Middle Ages, indeed written in a religious spirit, as theology and nothing else? And Greek literature, is it not interwoven with Greek myth? And doesn't modern history have its myths and narratives? Every society weaves its knowledge with its interpretation and belief, but still, sagacity helps to recognize books that are credible and represent society, as opposed to conspiracy theories. 3. Literature from various sources within society. The books of the prophets and writings include literature from different and even distant circles. On the one hand, the Tanakh preserves for us the court records of some of the kings, David and Solomon, and others. On the other hand, the writings of the prophets who opposed the establishment of the monarchy, the actions of the ministers and advisors. Alongside these, we have prophets who were priests presenting their view on the service of God and the temple, like Ezekiel. The Psalms show the singing of the Levites in the temple, a song drawn from their sources. The Tanakh also contains lists and chronicles of tribal inheritances and regional divisions, genealogies of genealogists, descriptions of wars, prophets who were social and anti-establishment activists, wisdom literature, and proverbs. Writings of the sons of the prophets who described miracles and actions of the prophets, folk songs depicting historical events from different tribes and places. The prophets and writers whose words are found in the Tanakh do not represent a uniform perspective. Some supported the monarchy and some opposed it, some supported the kingdom of Judah, and others the kingdom of Israel. Some emphasized moral correction more than sacrifices, and others emphasized sacrifices. Some fought against the high places, and some did not. The enormous variety of social sources expressed in the Tanakh indeed represents a mosaic of the entire Israeli culture in all its parts and periods. The literature of the Tanakh is not merely a collection of laws, history, or theology. In each of these areas, there are many and varied layers. The prophecies of a prophet found in one book are not one literary mass, but a collection of dozens of religious, political speeches, references to historical events, messages conveyed to kings and generals, words spoken to the elders of the people and their leaders, correspondences, negotiations with the priests of the temple, and so on. The Tanakh describes the royal courts, wars, and battles, but also the farmers and ordinary people. the wisdom and the proverbs, alongside life in the villages. Genealogies of the different tribes, how they worshipped God, religious wars and political wars, economic details and trades, folk songs, relationships with neighboring nations, and many more. The content of the books encompasses all layers of history. The literature of the Tanakh describes events starting immediately after the death of Moses, and it came to pass after the death of Moses in Joshua chapter 1. The book of Judges opens with, and it came to pass after the death of Joshua. The book of Samuel begins with the last judge, Eli, and ends with the reign of David. And Kings opens with, and King David was old and stricken in years. Thus, the entire history is depicted. It is not a selective description, but a compilation of thousands of documents and data of different kinds. The sequence is expressed in orderly lists of the names of leaders and judges in all generations, with their different life stories and genealogies. This sequence allows us to compile a chronology of the entire period. We are not talking about an artificial single list, but the cross-referencing of many lists from different areas. We can provide comprehensive information on every period from Israel in Egypt to the destruction of the temple, where they lived and settled, who ruled, where they fought, who were the enemies, who were the key spiritual figures, what were the religious trends. There is no dark period, no black hole, but a complete documentation of the entire period. The books are synchronized with each other. The book of Joshua knows the Torah and uses it. The book of Judges uses the book of Joshua and the Torah. The book of Samuel uses the 3 books that preceded it, and so on. There is no book in the prophets that cannot be proven to be founded on the Torah in many places. The books often deal with parallel subjects, touch on the same points, and can be compared with each other. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of the Tanakh's historical sequence. Stay tuned for more episodes that bring the pages of history to life.